Sometimes it's amazing to think that anything can survive in Southern California. When you soar across its towering mountains of sand, race across a valley that's also the hottest place on Earth, and discover volcanic craters that could easily be mistaken for Mars. But people have always found a way to thrive in this harsh desert land. From a Native American tribe that left behind these mysterious symbols in the sand, to the Spanish missionaries who settled its shores, to the movie moguls who turned Los Angeles into Hollywood. There's no better way to discover the true spirit of Southern California than from the air. It was here that an aviation pioneer built a new bomber that could soar on just a single elegant wing. Tough recruits come here to prove they have what it takes to be SEALs and Marines. And it was here that a legendary sports team became famous for its magic on the court and some of the most high-energy games in the NBA. Thousands may flock to Southern California to catch a glimpse of their favorite stars, but others risk their lives to get here by crossing one of the most fortified borders and daunting stretches of wilderness in the world. A big part of the wonder of Southern California is that it's a land of extremes. From its fertile Central Valley to the parched shores of its vast Salton Sea. Only here can you descend down to the lowest place in North America, but also stand right on the top of the highest spot in the lower 48. It's an epic journey that's only possible in the southern half of the Golden State, California. Southern California is home to some of the most extreme landscapes in the world. And there's none more extreme than its Death Valley. It's not only the driest place in America, it's also the hottest in the world. In 1913, temperatures here reached 134 degrees Fahrenheit, which remains to this day the hottest recorded temperature on Earth. One of the most stunning sun-baked landscapes in Death Valley is this one, the Eureka Dunes. This enormous pile of sand is up to 10,000 years old. It rises almost 700 feet from a dry lake bed here in Death Valley National Park. Soar along the spine of these dunes in the middle of summer, and it's easy to believe that these hot, towering ribbons of sand could never sustain life. But in fact, while the Eureka Dunes may be dry on the surface, they act like a giant sponge and are very good at holding moisture deep inside after it rains. It's how 5 different species of beetle are able to call them home, no matter how hot the surface gets on the outside. This is one of Death Valley National Park's most impressive forms. But there's another. It doesn't lie on top of the desert floor, but has been carved out of it. It's known as the Ubehebe Crater. Native Americans called this crater Coyote's Basket. It's a fitting name for this giant desert depression. The Ubehebe was created when hot magma deep below began rising towards the surface of the Earth. As it pushed upwards, it heated water above, which turned into steam. That steam expanded and finally caused the Earth around it to explode. It covered the area with magma and left a giant hole in its place. What makes Death Valley a truly daunting landscape for humans is not its ancient geological marvels, but this, a seemingly endless expanse of flat, cracked earth that covers more than 200 square miles. It's known as Badwater Basin. The floor of this valley is actually salt that drained down from the surrounding mountains and then dried up here. The patterns the dried salt makes are virtually untouched by humans or machines and are one of the wonders of America's national parks. And they're constantly changing. Every time it rains in Death Valley, the salt crystals here form and reform into entirely new patterns. As seismic forces push the mountains around the basin higher and higher over millions of years, the basin itself got pulled further and further down. It now lies 282 feet below sea level, which means it has the lowest elevation of any place in North America. There's no doubt that this is one of the most extreme environments anywhere on Earth. And that's one reason it inspired one of the most extreme sporting events in the world. Every year in July, for more than a quarter of a century, dozens of the world's toughest runners have descended on the desert in and around Death Valley. They come to take part in an epic foot race known as the Badwater Ultra Marathon. They will have to cover 135 miles, nearly the equivalent of 5 normal marathons. And they'll have to make vertical climbs that total 13,000 feet. Those who don't reach the finish line in 48 hours or less are disqualified. Originally, the race started in the bottom of Badwater Basin, the lowest point in North America, and ended on the very top of California's Mount Whitney, the highest peak in the continental United States. Amazingly, the distance between these two extreme landscapes is less than 100 miles. Each ultra-marathoner had to pick his or her own route across the desert to the finish line. But over time, the National Park Service grew concerned about the runners' safety. So in 2014, racers weren't allowed to cross Death Valley itself. The race ran through nearby Owens Valley instead. Here, they head out of the town of Lone Pine. Temperatures during the race can reach 120 degrees or higher. What starts as a run ends up being a long, hot walk. If runners don't pace themselves and stay hydrated, they can suffer kidney failure, brain damage, or even death. The air may reach 120 degrees, but the pavement can hit 200 and has even been known to melt running shoes. The extreme heat is one reason this race is invitation only. Support teams work to keep a careful eye on their runners and are trained to identify signs of impending illness. They keep them cool with water and bands of ice around their necks. But over the years, a few of the most extreme athletes have succeeded in running the Badwater route alone, unassisted. The last stretch heads up the Sierra Nevada mountains to the finish line under the trees here at the trailhead of Mount Whitney. There are no money prizes in this race. Those who finish before their 48 hours are up are awarded a Badwater belt buckle. For most who participate, just knowing that they've completed the toughest foot race on Earth is the best reward of all. But not all runners stop at the finish line. Some continue on for 11 more miles and 6,000 more vertical feet further up the mountain to summit the highest peak in the contiguous 48 states, Mount Whitney. Every year, almost 25,000 other climbers try to reach Mount Whitney's summit. The journey to get here is not for the faint of heart. It requires following a narrow trail that snakes past chasms and cliffs. One slip, and a climber can quickly plunge to his or her death. But those who reach Mount Whitney's 14,505-foot summit stand literally on the very top of the lower 48. It's something that's only possible in Southern California. The dramatic landscapes of this state may appeal to those eager to push themselves to the extreme for fun. But every year, here on California's southern border, hundreds of illegal migrants risk their lives trying to cross one of the most desolate landscapes in America without getting caught. This is one of the most stunning sights in Southern California, a place known as the Algodones Dunes. They cover the border where the U.S. ends and Mexico begins. A new 15-foot-high fence stretches right over the sand. It was built in 2008, part of the 224 miles of new fence built on the Mexican border during the Bush administration. It was designed so sand could flow through its steel beams while keeping migrants and smugglers out. Even if you could get up and over the fence, you'd have to survive a long hike across these baking hot ribbons of sand. The Algodones Dunes lie at the eastern edge of California's border with Mexico, near Yuma, Arizona. From here, the border runs west, past the town of Calexico, and into a desolate landscape known as the Jacumba Wilderness. The Department of Homeland Security considers this rugged and remote area a natural deterrent to illegal migrants. Human smugglers are known to charge a premium for helping them cross here. It's one reason there's not much of a border fence at all, just a low barrier to keep vehicles from racing across the U.S. line loaded with people or drugs. Once they reach Interstate 8, they can be hard to catch. But to the west is one of the most fortified stretches of border in the world. The high fence runs right into the Pacific Ocean, here just south of San Diego. High above, cameras and sensors keep watch 24/7 to make sure no one tries to jump the fence or swim around it. For families who come here, there's no doubt about where Mexico ends and the U.S. begins. This fence separates millions of people whose families live on both sides. When they want to visit each other, most come here, to the busiest land border crossing in the world, a place known as San Ysidro. It lies on the north edge of the Mexican city of Tijuana. Crossing into Southern California here can take a lot of patience. Lines of cars stretch back for miles into Tijuana's neighborhoods. Up to 50,000 northbound vehicles cross the border at San Ysidro every day, which makes it a tough job for U.S. border protection. Many cars are stopped on the U.S. side for a thorough scan. Overhead, 25,000 pedestrians walk out of Mexico every day. But for the Mexicans who first came north to explore the wonder and riches of what's now Southern California, there was no such thing as crossing the border. That's because all the land that's now California once belonged entirely to Mexico, and before that, to Spain. For most of its human history, the area that's now California was actually covered by a colorful patchwork of different Native American tribes and their tribal territories. There were once more Native American groups here than in any other U.S. state. But in the 1700s, Spanish armies began moving north from present-day Mexico. Guns and disease succeeded in wiping the tribes and their territories off the map, as Spain imposed a vast colonial empire it called New Spain in their place. The Spanish first discovered Southern California in 1542, when an explorer named Juan Cabrillo led a 3-ship naval expedition north into what's now called San Diego Bay. Cabrillo is remembered here at this monument high above San Diego, since he and his men were the first Europeans to see this sparkling natural harbor. But they weren't the first humans here. 3 members of the Kumeyaay tribe were waiting to greet the Spaniards when they stepped ashore. Cabrillo proceeded to lay claim to all the land here in the name of the Spanish crown. The Kumeyaay weren't happy seeing their land invaded and fought back, wounding 3 of Cabrillo's men. But it was the beginning of the end for the Kumeyaay and the rest of California's other native tribes. It took more than 200 years for Spain finally to establish a permanent colony here. In 1769, a Franciscan friar named Junipero Serra led a band of Spanish priests and soldiers back to San Diego Bay. His mission was to bring Catholicism to the region's native people. His first church, reconstructed here, was called Mission San Diego de Alcalá. Soon, 20 more missions were rising across California. Some of them lie at the center of the state's largest cities, from San Diego to San Francisco. But the one here in San Diego, which fell into ruin and was reconstructed in 1931, was the mother of them all, which is why it's one of San Diego's most popular historic sites. In Serra's day, Spanish galleons sailed right into San Diego Bay. Others anchored off the coast. If the captains of those ships returned today, they would stand in awe at the sight of this. A U.S. Navy hovercraft launching from Coronado Beach, the infamous training ground of the U.S. Navy SEALs. The U.S. military calls these giant machines LCACs, or Landing Craft Air Cushions. They're specially equipped for amphibious assault, to whisk troops, weapons, and even tanks from ships to shore, right across the surf. Coronado Beach has been the West Coast home base of the SEALs since 1961. Every potential recruit to this elite force has to come to this stretch of sand just outside San Diego and face a grueling 26-week program to find out if they're tough enough to be awarded the SEALs' treasured Gold Trident pin. Their 4th week here is called Hell Week. The Navy calls it the toughest training in the U.S. military. On the beach, they carry out missions in team building. There are tough obstacle courses, and they have to carry 300-pound logs in teams across the sand. Offshore, they launch from vessels and then head into the beach as they're trained in a variety of missions, from nighttime raids to extractions under fire to setting underwater explosives, and everything else that makes SEALs some of the most highly skilled members of the U.S. military. Today, San Diego is a hub for military training. Nearby, new recruits are finding out what it takes to be a member of the U.S. Marines. They fight each other with padded poles called pugil sticks to simulate combat with rifles and bayonets. At the end of every bout, only one Marine can be standing. Nearby, others learn martial arts and train in hand-to-hand combat. In 12 weeks, new Marines will go from being fresh recruits to full members of a platoon. Southern California has played an important role in the history of the U.S. military for more than a century, and not just with boots on the ground. Once, the skies above the Los Angeles Valley were home to some of the most innovative aircraft in the world. They still are today. One of the most legendary is this one, the Northrop N9MB, better known as the Flying Wing. It's a prototype of the now famous B-2 stealth bomber. It was the brainchild of aviation pioneer Jack Northrop. In the 1920s, he started imagining a new kind of plane that could reduce drag. Instead of it having 2 separate wings, a fuselage and a tail, he imagined it as just a single elegant wing. In 1941, Northrop was awarded a contract to build 4 prototypes of his revolutionary new bomber. They would be 1/3 the size of the real planes that the Air Force wanted. The first Flying Wing ended up crashing and killing its test pilot. This wing is the only one of 4 original prototypes that survived. In the 1920s and 30s, Southern California was the heart of America's aviation industry. The dry climate provided a high percentage of good days to fly every year, and the wide open valleys gave companies the airspace they needed to test out new models. McDonnell Douglas, Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, and Boeing all got their start here in Southern California. But Northrop's Flying Wing was one of the most visionary aircraft ever developed here. By the 1950s, advances in jet aviation helped turn LA into a city famous for its professional sports, almost overnight. In 1958, the owner of the Brooklyn Dodgers moved the team to LA. After the city promised to build him a brand new stadium, the Dodgers soon became the first professional baseball team to use their own plane to travel to games all over the country. The new LA Dodgers won their first game 6-5. It was against their long-standing rivals, the Giants, who also moved west to San Francisco from New York that same year. The new Dodgers Stadium finally opened in 1962 on its perch here next to Elysian Park above Los Angeles. The Dodgers' move west was a financial success for the team's owner, which prompted the owner of the Minneapolis Lakers to move his team to LA just 2 years later. The Staples Center, where the Lakers now play, opened much later, in 1999. It has more than 19,000 seats for those who come to cheer on one of the most winning teams in NBA history. Thanks to legends that include George Mikan, Shaquille O'Neal, Kobe Bryant, and coaches Pat Riley and Phil Jackson. During its famous Showtime era in the 1980s, Lakers games were some of the most highly charged and attended in the NBA. There was music, dancers, and a run-and-gun style of play on the court, known for the fast breaks of stars Magic Johnson and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Celebrities lined the front seats, cheering on a team that won 5 NBA championships between 1980 and 1991. Today, the Lakers share the Staples Center with LA's other NBA team, the Clippers. The National Hockey League's LA Kings also call the Staples Center home and won 2 Stanley Cup titles right here on the ice in 2012 and 2014. Today, downtown Los Angeles has one of the most impressive skylines in the nation and is home to the tallest building on the West Coast, the U.S. Bank Tower. But one of this city's most visited landmarks isn't downtown. It's perched here on its mountain in Brentwood, overlooking the city. This is the vast museum and research complex called the Getty Center. It's the richest art institution in the world, with gardens designed by artist Robert Irwin and sleek buildings by architect Richard Meyer that are sheathed entirely in Italian stone. Many Angelenos don't actually come here to stroll through its galleries, but just to enjoy this oasis of calm and a stunning view over the city they call home. But LA may never have become much of a city at all if it wasn't for the discovery of black gold and the questionable dealings of a few men whose insatiable thirst turned these desert plots into fortunes. What makes California one of the nation's most unique states is the incredible number and variety of its geological marvels. From snow-capped volcanic peaks in the north, to its fields of lava, to a stretch of stunning wild coast known as Big Sur. But one of the most impressive landscapes in all of California straddles north and south, the dramatic granite forms of Yosemite National Park. They are the reason Yosemite is one of the most visited national parks in the nation. What makes the granite here so stunning is its polished surface. Roughly 2 million years ago, glaciers covered the Sierra Nevada mountains. As giant sheets of ice slid slowly down their flanks, boulders in the ice scoured and polished the granite that lay below, creating this landscape. One of the most prized sights in all of Yosemite emerged when the giant ice fields here finally melted, the Tuolumne Meadows. But fly east of the park, and the Sierra suddenly plunged down to a place known as Owens Valley. This arid valley and the river that runs through it have played a leading role in one of Southern California's most infamous tales. A tale of how a few men's ambition and greed sucked the life out of one California valley in order for Los Angeles to become one of the richest in the world. It's the story that inspired the 1974 Hollywood hit Chinatown. By the 1890s, LA was a boomtown, fueled by oil and the arrival of the railway. As more and more people flooded in, speculators were on the prowl for new ways to turn desert plots into fortunes. One of those developers, an engineer named Fred Eaton, became the mayor of Los Angeles in 1898. Eaton believed that the only way his city was going to survive and grow in the 20th century was if it found a new supply of water. So he hatched a radical plan. He would take the water from a river valley 230 miles to the north and direct it down to Los Angeles. He worked with his friend, William Mulholland, the city's head of water and power, to make it happen. But before they could take a drop of water from Owens Valley, they first needed to get their hands on water rights. So, in 1905, Mulholland started to buy up land in the valley secretly for the city of Los Angeles. He claimed it was for an irrigation project that would help local farmers and ranchers. But by the time the Los Angeles Times revealed what Eaton and Mulholland were really up to, the city of LA already owned a major stake in Owens Valley and most of its water. The next challenge was for Mulholland to get all that water down to LA. It took one of the biggest engineering projects in U.S. history, which kicked off in 1907. Thousands of men worked 6 years on a massive new aqueduct. 43 of them died helping build the channels, tunnels, and gates that direct the riches of Owens Valley right down into the heart of Los Angeles, by gravity alone. On November 5th, 1913, 40,000 Angelinos gathered below these artificial cascades on the edge of the Los Angeles basin and gazed up at Mulholland as he opened the gates and sent Owens Valley's water rushing down into LA. "There it is," he famously told the crowd. "Take it." But despite Eaton's and Mulholland's claims, the city of Los Angeles didn't actually need much of the water from the aqueduct in the years that followed. During that time, much of it was used to irrigate the nearby San Fernando Valley instead, where Eaton's investor friends turned property they had bought for cheap into expensive green housing lots. In 1924, developers named this curving road along the crest of the Hollywood Hills Mulholland Highway, after the engineer who had brought them their water. Now called Mulholland Drive, it's been home to some of the most famous names in Hollywood, including Warren Beatty, Denzel Washington, and Madonna. This is the home of Jack Nicholson, who starred in the 1974 hit Chinatown, which was inspired by Mulholland's strong-arm tactics and the story of LA's aqueduct. When Nicholson bought this house here in 1969, his longtime idol, Marlon Brando, lived right next door. Nicholson is reported to have called the mountain where they both lived Bad Boy Hill. The two actors became good friends, and after Brando died in 2004, Nicholson bought his house for more than $5 million. He later tore it down, except for Brando's former swimming pool. Nicholson's own house became famous in 1977 as the scene of a crime that gripped Hollywood. It was here where director Roman Polanski, the director of Chinatown, committed his infamous rape of a 13-year-old model while Nicholson was out of town. Polanski pled guilty to the rape, but then fled the country to escape jail time and has never returned. Long before Mulholland Drive even existed, LA's millionaires live down on the valley floor. One of the first lived here in this imposing mansion. He gained his celebrity by kicking off the transformation of this once dusty little desert town into the booming metropolis it is today. His name was Edward L. Doheny, and oil was what made him rich. In the 1890s, Doheny, a failed silver miner, discovered that tar was oozing from the ground in Los Angeles. He and a partner dug a well, and on April 20th, 1892, they struck oil. Soon, Los Angeles was covered with oil derricks that made Doheny a fortune. As tens of thousands arrived to work in the new oil fields, LA was transformed into a boomtown. The story behind how Doheny did it inspired the plot of the Academy Award-winning film There Will Be Blood, starring Daniel Day-Lewis. Here in Inglewood, pump jacks still work 24/7, sucking California's black gold out of the ground, just as they've been doing in LA for more than 100 years. Today, Los Angeles is the second most productive oil county in the state and has produced more than 9 billion barrels of oil over the years. But as neighborhoods grew up around the oil fields, the oil industry has had to work hard to keep its operations from being eyesores. One of the strangest solutions they've come up with lies here, just off the coast of Long Beach. In the 1960s, oil companies built a series of artificial islands to hide their offshore drilling rigs that were tapping the riches of the Wilmington oil field deep below. They designed them to look like tropical resorts by ringing them with palm trees and building structures that would look like luxury hotels. It's all so residents on Long Beach don't have to look out at dirty drilling rigs. Oil and water played major roles in the birth of Los Angeles. But in 1910, a new type of tycoon started arriving in town: movie moguls from the East. Their profound impact on this city is symbolized by 9 towering letters high in the Hollywood Hills. The Hollywood sign wasn't originally created to plug the movie business. It first appeared in 1923 to advertise a new residential development here called Hollywoodland. But after the silver screen brought Hollywood fame, the last 4 letters were lopped off, and it's been just Hollywood ever since. In 1932, a failed starlet named Peg Entwistle jumped to her death from the H, which only helped burnish its legend. When the original letters started to collapse in the 1970s, a bunch of movie actors helped raise money to replace them. Rocker Alice Cooper sponsored one of the O's in memory of Groucho Marx. Today, most who visit Hollywood are happy to just catch a glimpse of these iconic 45-foot-high white metal letters from afar. It's here along Hollywood Boulevard where they come to get close to their favorite stars on its legendary Walk of Fame. Hollywood Chamber of Commerce President E.M. Stewart came up with the idea for this star-studded walk in 1953, when Tinseltown's glamour was starting to fade. Stewart hoped the walk would bring it and the tourists back. They've been coming to Hollywood to gawk at his celebrity stars ever since, snap pictures of their favorites, or pause to mourn for a star that has recently passed away. But what many fans don't know is that celebrities have to be approved by a committee before they get a star. They or their sponsors also have to fork over $30,000, which is what a new star on the Walk of Fame costs today. The fan frenzy reaches its peak here, in front of the classic Chinese theater, the site of many Hollywood premieres. For decades, the theater's longtime owner, Sid Grauman, asked the actors who passed through to leave their handprints, footprints, and signatures in his courtyard in wet cement. Now, hordes of tourists come here eager to see the results. The Chinese theater was built in an age when most Hollywood movies were shot in studios right here in town. Today, just one remains: Paramount Pictures. It was founded by Jesse Lasky, Adolph Zucker, and Cecil B. DeMille in the 1920s and remains the oldest running studio in Hollywood. Some of Hollywood's greatest early hits were made here, behind Paramount's iconic gates. screen legends Mae West, Montgomery Clift, Elizabeth Taylor, and Harrison Ford have all worked here. Out back are sets built to look like streets and alleys in New York and Chicago. They've appeared in episodes of Seinfeld, Frasier, and CSI. Paramount Studios even has its own lumber yard, so designers can create just about any set a director could dream of. Unless, of course, they want to shoot cowboys racing across the plains. When directors want a Western backdrop close to town, they often head here into the dusty Santa Clarita Valley just 30 miles away. This is the Veloze Motion Picture Ranch, part of a large collection of outdoor sets built just for Hollywood and television. Shows from Gunsmoke to Dukes of Hazzard to Deadwood and 24 have all had scenes shot here in these hills. This set has a complete Spanish town, a perfect setting for the cowboy and Indian shoot-ups that were standard fare in Hollywood for decades. Actors arrive here, ready for their close-ups as gunslingers, sheriffs, stagecoach drivers, and more. But there's another compound, this one tucked away in the hills outside LA, where many in Hollywood have gone not to inhabit fictional characters, but to discover themselves as members of what some call a cult. For years, here at the base of the San Jacinto Mountains, south of Los Angeles, was a high-end spa called Gilman Hot Springs that catered to movie stars. But by 1978, it was going bankrupt and was sold to a secret buyer known only as the Scottish Highland Quietude Society that reportedly paid for the property with $2.7 million in cash. That society was actually the Church of Scientology, which soon transformed the spa into its international headquarters. Today, its 500-acre campus is infamously known as Gold Base. In 1950, L. Ron Hubbard published his New York Times bestseller, Dianetics. And a few years later, in 1954, the Church of Scientology was born. Soon, new Scientology centers were opened around the world. John Travolta and Tom Cruise may now be the church's most famous members, but they are just two of many celebrities who have been involved with Scientology over the years. Today, Gold Base is home to the offices of church leader David Miscavige and the Cinecastle, an entire movie studio where the church produces promotional films and videos that it translates into 15 languages to lure new recruits from around the world. But some former members claim that Gold Base is also used as a harsh re-education camp. They claim that when high-ranking members threaten to defect, church officials go on the offensive and send them here to be punished and reformed. In various court cases, books, and documentaries, former church members have described being held against their will in a building known as the Hole. Some say they've been forced to do menial labor and stay awake around the clock on little food for months at a time. Others have claimed that they were even physically and mentally abused by the head of the church himself, accusations that he and the church have vehemently denied. From the air, it's clear that security is tight around this vast hillside campus, with a fence, motion detectors, and cameras lining its perimeter. To become part of the Church of Scientology, new members have to sign a 1 billion-year contract to prove their eternal commitment. Overlooking Gold Base is founder L. Ron Hubbard's $10 million mansion called Bonneview. Hubbard never actually lived here before he died in 1986. But today, the church keeps Bonneview and its gardens in tip-top shape and fully staffed, allegedly kept ready for what they believe will be Hubbard's return to Earth. Southern California has always been a land for dreamers. The Spanish explorers who first arrived on its shores were some of the first, which helps explain how California got its name. In the 16th century, a popular Spanish romance novel told the story of the queen of an island paradise called California. It was imagined as a place ruled by brave women warriors, an earthly paradise full of gold. Spanish sailors long dreamed they might one day find such an island. When they first sailed up the Pacific coast, they decided to give the paradise they discovered here the name California. There are places in Southern California that have changed little since those colonial days. One of them lies here in the state's remote southeastern corner. It's a land of towering ancient pinnacles scattered around the Colorado River, which now divides California from Arizona. In ancient times, this river flooded frequently and deposited layers of nutrient-rich soil along its banks that lured a series of Native American tribes. One of them left behind an archaeological mystery that still leaves scientists scratching their heads today. The dry, dusty soil of southeastern California may seem like a vast expanse of uninhabitable desert, but actually holds rich evidence of the people and cultures that once called this region home. In the 1930s, a pilot was flying to Los Angeles when he spotted a number of strange figures down below, etched into the Southern California desert. The largest of them measured in at 171 feet long. Soon, archaeologists revealed that these geoglyphs were probably hundreds of years old and had been well preserved thanks to the harsh desert sun and lack of rain here. Whoever created them did it by scraping away the top layer of rocks in order to make designs and figures from the lighter rocks below. They lie outside the town of Blythe and are now known as the Blythe Intaglios. Scientists still don't know exactly who created them and why or what the individual figures mean. But there's one thing for certain: these impressive forms are rich evidence of California's ancient past and are best experienced from the air. Today, new kinds of patterns are appearing here on the desert floor. Eastern California is the heart of a new boom in solar energy as utility companies race to meet new state and federal guidelines for renewables. This facility uses 600,000 mirrors to harness the heat of the sun and generate enough electricity to power almost 90,000 homes a year. But when crews raced to construct it in 2011, they unearthed roughly 3,000 Native American artifacts here, including tools and human bones. But trying to carve out an existence in this harsh region can be a roll of the dice. Just ask anyone who lives here in a town called Bombay Beach. From the air, it looks like it could be an outpost on Mars, except of course for the lake. But the history of Bombay Beach is surprising and a warning to anyone tempted by the promise of living in an oasis in the desert. It all started back in 1905 when a levee holding back water from the Colorado River broke, and the river started flowing west into what was then a dry desert valley here. It took engineers 1.5 years to fix the leak, but by then it had created what came to be known as the Salton Sea. It's one of the most fascinating landscapes in all of California. It's the largest lake in the state, located in the middle of the desert, and created completely by accident. In the 1960s, developers moved in and turned it into a thriving resort destination. They sold housing lots by the dozens, sometimes taking prospective buyers up in planes to sell properties from the air. Today, the community of Bombay Beach is nothing like what it used to be. Once, it was home to a hopping resort with a golf course and yacht club. Celebrities, including Frank Sinatra and the Beach Boys, used to visit. But the problem with the Salton Sea was that its only source of new water was runoff from surrounding fields. Over time, those fields leached DDT and other pesticides into the lake. They and other natural toxins started killing fish and endangered the flocks of birds that came to the Salton Sea to feed. As the lake started to die, people no longer wanted to leap into its salty waters or lie on its dusty shores. No one knows what will happen to the Salton Sea, but one thing is for certain: if it dries up completely, the fine grains of silt and salt in this 100,000-acre lake bed will be kicked up into the air in great clouds of toxic dust, which could become an environmental disaster. The Salton Sea may have been created by accident, but fly north of Los Angeles and you'll discover what can happen in California when water, hard work, and great weather combine to create one of the richest valleys in the world. Southern California may be known for its many forbidding landscapes, vast oil fields built to tap riches deep below, and engineering marvels that make life here possible. But Southern California isn't entirely a desert land, especially here in the Central Valley. The Central Valley begins around Bakersfield and then stretches 450 miles north, right across Central California, past the state capital of Sacramento, and all the way up to Redding, just about 100 miles short of the Oregon border. On many Central Valley fields, there's no sign at all that California is suffering the worst drought in its recorded history. Thanks to aquifers, sprinklers are hard at work, turning what would be otherwise dusty farmland into fields of gold. With some of the best soil in the nation and 300 days of sun a year, the Central Valley produces more than 25% of all the produce consumed in America. For every farmer here, life is a continuous battle to keep the soil in their naturally dry and dusty fields well watered, and to keep the Central Valley working its wonders as one of the most productive agricultural regions in the world. One of the biggest crops here is easy to spot from the air, at least after it's been harvested: carrots. 85% of all carrots consumed in America start their journey here in the Central Valley. This one producer, Bolthouse Farms, processes 6 million pounds of carrots every day. It'll take just 1 hour for these carrots to be prepared for sale. First, they're washed in the trucks they arrive in. Then, they're loaded onto conveyor belts that whisk them around the plant as they are washed again, sorted, trimmed, peeled, and finally bagged for sale. In the 1980s, a carrot farmer named Mike Urasek wanted to find a way to use all the imperfect carrots that didn't make the grade. He decided to cut the leftover pieces into 2-inch lengths and then peel them to look like mini carrots. Today, baby carrots are available in just about every supermarket across the country. What makes the Central Valley so productive is a workforce of migrant labor. Back in the 1930s, a wave of migrants flooded into this part of the Central Valley after fleeing drought in Oklahoma and Texas and across the Great Plains. The U.S. government built labor camps to house the new arrivals. One of them, called Weed Patch, still stands here, southeast of Bakersfield. Up to 500 migrants lived here and eked out a meager existence working in the Central Valley's fields. The foundations of the simple houses they lived in are still here, and they stand as evidence of those tough times. Author John Steinbeck visited this camp in the 1930s and ended up basing his famous novel, The Grapes of Wrath, on characters he met here and their experiences fleeing the Dust Bowl for a better life in California. The Weed Patch Camp was even featured in the book. The hard work of migrants at camps like this one helped transform the Central Valley into what it is today. And even now, the Weed Patch Camp still serves as home to seasonal migrants from Mexico and Central America who come to pick California's bounty, which includes about 250 different crops, from navel oranges to pecans to almonds, grapes, apricots, and asparagus, all from these fields that are just part of the wonder of Southern California. It's a stunning natural world that's been luring dreamers adventurers, and others for centuries. From the ancient people who left their mark in what now seems like the middle of nowhere, to the tycoons who made their first fortunes in its arid valleys, to the movie moguls, stars, and starlets who followed. Some come to train on its Pacific coast. Others to see if they can survive the desert and do whatever it takes to set foot on the highest spot in the lower 48. This is the true spirit of Southern California.